Hi guys, happy Tuesday. No, oh my god, it's Wednesday. I've already messed up. Welcome to the morning after. It feels like Tuesday, but it's actually Wednesday because we are recapping 2 nights worth of The Bachelor. We have a lot to talk about today, so I'm gonna go through this like pretty rapid fire today. As you know, we start off the morning after with a moment that delivered, and this spans across both episodes, but I think it's clear what the moment that delivered was. And of course, you know this is brought to you by Skip the Dishes, and if you're Canadian, you definitely know and use Skip the Dishes. They deliver food to your home, and so you don't have to leave your home, and it's fantastic. So this week's moment that delivered across both episodes is Colton shedding the Bachelor facade and saying what he's not supposed to say and pretty much doing whatever he could in his power to keep Cassie there. This was a really real moment and super compelling. I mean, this is why we watch reality TV. We don't watch reality TV to watch, you know, The Bachelor like dole out his I love yous right on schedule and to, you know, and talk about his feelings with each woman. It's for moments like this, and it's moments like this, they just keep us coming back to this show. It's hard to resist. He said every relationship moves at a different pace, and if at the end of this we're not ready for an engagement, we're not ready for an engagement. This is pretty big news. I mean, back in the early days of The Bachelor, the seasons didn't necessarily end with engagements. I think the first couple of seasons didn't. It was just like, oh, we're gonna be together now for a while. And then somewhere along the line, it became like higher stakes and you had to be engaged or else you were considered some sort of a failure. And it's just, this really makes you think. Like the fact that he went there and said this really felt like a big, you know, like my jaw dropped. It's like, oh, he's not supposed to be saying that. We all know he's not supposed to be saying that, but he said it anyway, and that's what made it so real. And it makes you also wonder how things would be different, not only for Cassie, but for contestants in general, if there wasn't that looming proposal at the end. A lot of people want it, but a lot of people don't, and it makes you wonder if the decisions they make and even the pace that they go at would be different. Anyway, that was this week's moment that delivered. All right, so I'm going to start off with episode 9. This was Monday night. We have a lot to cover. Okay, so it starts off with Tayshia's one-on-one in Portugal, and it's pretty much a day full of virginity jokes, honestly. Some made sense, some didn't. Colton had to mention that the olive oil that Portugal produces is extra virgin, wink wink. Like, we get it. And then my favorite thing about this date was definitely the boob tape discussion. This felt like something that would normally be left on the editing floor, or at least saved until bloopers at the end of at Women Tell All. So it just sort of felt like this really cute and real moment, and it showed both their personalities, and it was just honestly a refreshing little light moment in what would end up being an extremely heavy and dramatic episode. Okay, we move on to Cassie. Tons of build up to what ends up happening in, oh, thank you, Rocky. Rocky called me fancy. Thank you. Tons of build up in the day. Colton says there's just something about Cassie, and Cassie makes me feel complete. I mean, these are pretty big statements, especially considering there's 2 other women involved. And of course, it becomes clear later on what this is all building to. They talk about her dad by day, and to be honest, I was surprised by Cassie's surprise at, not only at her dad not giving Colton, you know, that blessing that he had sought, but also by her anger. I guess because we saw what we saw of Cassie's dad, and we never saw any kind of it ending on a good note or any kind of resolution there, which I suppose there had been. But it just sort of felt like it wasn't that surprising that he didn't give his blessing based on what we saw. And so I just was surprised by her surprise at that. It's such perfect timing that her dad would happen to come while Cassie's getting ready for the evening portion of that date. How convenient, I wrote. And then Cassie, while talking to her dad, is waffling about accepting proposal, but also saying she's not ready for it to be over. I don't know how this wasn't like more active on Twitter, but for me this was major Becca Tilly vibes. This is exactly what Becca said in, I think, the finale of Chris Soules' season. She said, I'm not ready for it to be over, but she was also waffling about the proposal aspect. And yeah, it was like Becca Tilly all over again, except the difference was, as we would learn later, I don't know, you could still watch Chris Soules' season and think that he was gonna go with Becca Tilly if she had been more game for that proposal. In the evening, Colton starts off by emphasizing that his convo with Cassie's dad didn't change anything for him. To me, this felt very much like a producer was like, make sure you emphasize that, you know, the conversation with her dad didn't change anything for you. It almost felt like he was like reintroducing the topic that, and then he was going to get shot down over it. Does that make sense? Like, it felt like a producer told him to say this. Of course, he didn't know why yet. The moment here where Cassie reveals that her dad came to visit her, this was, I mean, probably the moment of the entire season for me. You know that if you read my Pretty Pandas recaps that I will be making a gif of this, or a gif, depending on how you pronounce it. This is the moment that changed everything. You can see Colton kind of like, and like look around, and he's sort of taking stock of everything, and you can see him realize that even though he's the lead of the season, he's the one, you know, supposedly in control, you see in that moment that he realizes that he too is a lab rat. It's not just his women. And even though it's like a sick moment, it's really great reality TV. It was just an awesome, like, just shift. And you could feel the energy change where all these people who he thought were with him and rooting for him were suddenly, they had been conspiring against him. You know, not only were they talking to Cassie about her departure, but they were also flying in her dad from California to Portugal. Like, they were laying down plans to pull the rug out from under him. It's a pretty big betrayal. Okay, now, God, there's so much to talk about. I keep getting like, So the whole Cassie thing, to me, it's clear that she was just not that into him based on how this goes down. She keeps talking almost to herself and about herself. She's, I don't know, I feel like I should know, I feel like I should know by now. And to her producer, she's like, this is so much harder than I thought it would be. I don't know what to say. It's all about her and just sort of being in her head, sort of talking to herself. If she was super, super into Colton and, you know, loved him as she claimed she did, she would be more upset about how upset he was. Do you know what I mean? Even him saying, he kept saying, I love you, which is a huge deal. Like, there's still 2 other women. She wasn't even like, oh my God, you love me? Like, you know, there was no like receiving of love. It was just like, but I don't know. Like, she was just sort of all over the place. And even I think the one response she did make directly to him saying, I love you, was to say, how can you say that with 2 other women here? That's just not the appropriate response in that moment. It just shows that, you know, I think she liked him, was having a nice time, but there's no, like, really deep care for him as a human based on how she responded to his response in that situation. Okay, and then, I mean, at the end of this episode, I mean, this is just epic. This is a really good episode. I mean, from reality TV, just, like, realness perspective. Colton just pretty much rips off his mic pack, is just like throwing things around, punching cameras, and he just ditches the show. He jumps the fence, which did not let us down. And I did the Here to Make Friends podcast on HuffPost yesterday with HuffPost. The Here to Make Friends podcast with Claire Fallon and Emma Gray. You probably know it. And we talked about this. This scene was actually way better than it was teased. Usually these dramatic moments end up being kind of a disappointment, but in this case it was like, whoa, this was really, you know, it was pretty compelling. And I wrote in my recap yesterday, major Truman Show vibes. If you've not seen The Truman Show and you watch The Bachelor, you need to see The Truman Show. I know it's 20 years old, but that movie does not go out of style. It's very good. Okay, barreling along here, we'll move on to last night's Women Tell All. As you guys know, I love Tell All episodes. I have no shame admitting that. A lot of people hate them and think that they're kind of filler episode of the season, but they're really right up my alley. First, I'm just gonna go rapidly and just talk about each of the, you know, standout moments here because there's just a lot to cover. In Onyeka versus Nicole, Nicole said she felt like she was drowning in all the voices talking over her. But my issue with Nicole is that she wasn't listening either. There was no sense of her responding to what people saying. It was just her playing victim. And here's the thing, Onyeka's also wrong. Onyeka shouldn't have said, you know, when asking Nicole for an example of when she had bullied her, don't then finish up with like, thank you, next, and like sit back down like she's not going to listen to the actual example she just requested. And she also called, you know, Sydney a coward for the way she left. It just was not a productive way of proving that you're not a bully. Here's the thing, I actually don't think Onyeka was a bully. I just don't think that retaliating in that situation helps her argument. And also, Nicole shouldn't be so casual with the term bullying. You know, there is legit bullying in this world, and It really affects a lot of people seriously, and based on how everyone else responded, where there's smoke, there's fire. There was not enough smoke surrounding Onyeka being a bully for me to believe Nicole in this situation. Okay, Katie versus Caelynn. It's kind of a similar where there's smoke thing. There's more smoke here surrounding Caelynn. Caelynn has definitely been entrenched in more drama this season. And meanwhile, Katie's reaction to Caelynn giving her side of the story about the phone call they had after this, after they both left the show, was pretty telling to me. I believe Katie. I like Caelynn too. Here's the thing. I'm not just, team whomever. It's just that based on this, I kind of wish Caelynn had just sort of owned the conversation, been like, yeah, we talked about that, but it was before our feelings got really serious. In general, there was too much denying of this conversation as a whole, and then suddenly being like, but this is the conversation we had. It's like you just denied having that conversation for like 2 weeks. Do you know what I mean? It's like from the get-go, just admit you had it, and maybe that's not what you meant, or now you feel differently. Okay. Next, we have Demi versus Courtney. I was Team Demi before, and I continue to be Team Demi here. I talk about this in my recap today, but in what world is it okay to go up to another human being and shove something in their mouth? Like, that's just not normal behavior, especially from someone who claims to be the adult in the situation. Moving on. Demi's hot seat. She says, I'm comfortable with who I am and I know who I am. That's more mature than what some people think maturity really is. I loved this. I think that Demi, you could love her or hate her. She's a very specific flavor, but she's consistent. And she doesn't attack people for no reason. You might think she's a big personality, but it's not personal. I really love here too how she let her vulnerability kind of show through. She expressed how difficult it is for her to be vulnerable. She kind of perceives it as weakness, but it really does make her a three-dimensional person. It makes her go from a caricature to someone you want to like be friends with, and she definitely hit all the nails on the head with that. She was great. Okay, Nicole gets a hot seat. This, honestly, I like Nicole fine, but this felt like she was being rewarded for crying a lot. Like, I don't really know how Nicole was a major enough player in this season to have gotten a hot seat. And then we realized that the entire segment is sponsored by Halo Top, and everything makes sense. Hannah B is in the hot seat. I really loved this. It really felt like Hannah B went on this journey of self-discovery and personal growth, and it just, even that toast at the end, it was proof of all that. And I mean, she was giving major Bachelorette vibes here. Just the overall, I'm still looking for love, but I am confident and like over it, and just she had this I said self-assuredness already, but it really is the word I want to use here. Like, she just seemed like she was cool with where she was. And even with when Colton arrived, it wasn't like, when did you know? Like, why did you do that to me? I don't like the way you did that. She was more like, we're cool, which is the ultimate. You want to watch that girl lead her own season. Caelynn's hot seat. Caelynn, to me, is more broken up about Colton in this situation than I feel she should be, and more than I'd expect. Especially given there were 3 other girls that he kept over her. It doesn't really make sense that Caelynn would be as upset as she was that Colton would leave her behind. I understand that she was in love with him. I have sympathy for that, but at the same time, she was there for probably a total of 2 months, maybe 9 weeks, kind of in that ballpark. But that was over 3 months ago, I think about 3.5 months ago. So basically there's been more time now since she left than in their entire relationship. It just seemed disproportionate how upset she was. It for me, it's easy for me to say, like, because I'm just watching from the comfort of my sofa. But to me, it's like, clearly it's not what you thought it was, and therefore I don't see how you can dwell for 3 months about something that was not what you thought it was, I guess. Okay, moving on. Colton arrives. There's not really much to say here. He doesn't say a whole lot except for this pretty awesome quote, which is, as the Bachelor, I think I could have done a lot of things better. I just love that. I said, this makes me love him. I love the fact that he can, critique himself. He's not defensive, and that's a favorite trait of mine, honestly. And so, yeah, I thought, overall, good women tell all. kind of catty. It was a little louder and younger feeling than usual, but overall it was, you know, it was entertaining. It was good fluff. My brain enjoyed the break. All right, you guys, thank you for tuning into this very intense, very long, and very detailed morning after. Be sure to read my Flair recap, which will come out later today, my Pretty Pandas recap for episode 9, which will come out later this week. And thank you for tuning in. I'll see you here next week on the morning after for the big finale.